All right, welcome to the Paranormal Pete Show. It's Tuesday, January 12th. My goodness, time is flying. It's episode 7 with my very special guest, Mr. William Becker. William, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's really a joy to be here.
So glad to have you. It's episode 7 of the Paranormal Pete Show. I'm your host, Pete Orbea. With special guest William Becker, and we're part of the Let's Talk radio station family at www.wltkdb.com, and that's where you can catch archives of all the shows. There's some really great shows on this station, and so make sure you go to wltkdb.com and check out this archive. Or if you have any sort of streaming podcast service, you can find Let's Talk Radio and all the shows on all major streaming podcast services. So you can always find us. I'm really glad to have William Becker on tonight. He's a psychic medium and a great friend. He's kind of been a mentor in my psychic journey, which I think it's important. Anybody going through an awakening or learning about your abilities, it's good to have someone that can help you along. And so William's always kind of been a mentor for me as far as psychic work, and so I appreciate that. But real quick, just want to say since our last show, a lot has happened, and so I'm hoping that tonight William and I can help take your mind off everything else going on for a while and get you to think about some other things. So looking forward to having some fun tonight and good conversation. We'll be back on next Tuesday as well. Mo's on Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. Pacific time. So if you're on the East Coast, you're probably driving home from a late shift, and we hope we keep you going. But every Tuesday. I met William at the Port Gamble Ghost Conference, and as many of my guests, if you've been following the show, you'll notice that a lot of them I've met at the Port Gamble Ghost Conference or the Oregon Ghost Conference, and which proves the point that conferences are a great thing to go to and support, because you get to meet a lot of great people, a lot of like-minded people. Or people that aren't going to judge you. So it just kind of proves that point. And William is no exception, because I met him, it must have been 2012, I think, is when you came to the Port Gamble Ghost Conference for the first time.
Probably.
Can you believe that?
No, I have trouble keeping up with dates and what year it is now.
And you're a history guy? No, I'm just teasing.
Yeah, but this is too recent,
Too recent. Not historical enough. All right. Well, I'll take that.
It's not.
I'll take that.
It's less than 2,000 years old.
All right. I see where we're going to have some fun talking about some history tonight, I think. And so in 2012 is when I met you, and you were a speaker, and that was one of my first years of being involved with the conference. And so I can say that the first time I ever felt like I psychically saw something was because of you. And
that's right.
Yeah, and I've often people ask me about my story and where did it start, and I always talk about seeing you as a speaker at the conference, and you started pulling people out of the audience and doing readings, and I noticed this figure that was standing behind you, and it would kind of move around, and then when you would start to connect and give a reading for the person who came up there, this this silhouette, this figure would kind of disperse into this large cloud of some various colors, and then it would always condense back down when you were done.
Mhm.
And looked like he had a hat on, and it wasn't your shadow. But and at first I thought, I was talking about that. I thought maybe my eyes were playing tricks on me because I was, felt like I was probably had to have been tired from working at the conference and running around all weekend.
Those are a lot of work to
And
put on.
or
I know.
yeah, yes, and or if I was just hungry, I wasn't quite sure.
Mhm.
But then after you were done speaking, I went to tell you what I had experienced, or to see if, am I seeing things or whatever. And you were already speaking with Neil McNeil. And as I walked up, he was describing to you exactly what I had just seen.
Right.
And my
And that
stomach
was new to me.
sank.
And I didn't know that before.
Yeah.
So you two really helped me to know that that was going on.
Oh, that's
So
cool. I'm
I,
glad we
I
helped
don't know
you.
if yeah, and I don't know if it still does or not, actually.
Well, we'll have to see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, that's something that's one of those experiences that I know it's going to stick with me for the rest of my life in this existence, at least. Um, so I thank you for that.
Oh, thank
Um,
you. You're welcome.
but then after, I learned about the Oregon Ghost Conference from you. You're
Mhm.
one of the original co-founders of the Oregon Ghost Conference,
Right.
and talk a little bit about how it was getting that started.
Well, that was, Rocky Smith had the idea for quite a while, and he was busy. He teaches, and he'd just become a city commissioner and all kinds of stuff. And just said, look, we're either going to do it or quit talking about it, And so we did it and we built it. I had a lot of contacts through West Coast Ghost Hunters. It was an app, a website my good friend John Collins had put together.
Mm-hmm.
And that was where people started meeting and um, getting together and making the connections. Because until then, we had all these isolated groups of people, and some of them fairly large even, but there wasn't any of the interconnectedness, especially over large areas. And so that kind of made it possible because then we were connecting with people all over the country and then all over in Europe and such as well. Sadly, because of hacking and a whole lot of things, that website isn't doing anything anymore. But that gave us the foundation to then invite speakers and invite people to come and teams to come and set up booths. And we had a good location that worked for the first 3 years, and
Mm-hmm.
we outgrew it. Um, and then I no longer was involved. I was doing some traveling and different things, and you know, Ghost Conference
Yeah.
in Oregon, Ghost Club meeting in London, no contest.
Yeah, you love to travel and see everything you can out there, and I think that's pretty cool.
Thank you.
Yeah,
But
and
it's fun to put on a conference. It's a lot of work.
mhm.
Um, that's an understatement. But you get a chance to meet some people. And one of the things I like, you were talking about, you meet people that like-minded and such. Well, you also meet some that aren't, but that's good because it makes you think and it helps us
Right,
to expand our knowledge or at least think more closely. We might not change our mind, but
right.
if we're open-minded, we can explore what people are saying
Hmm.
and then come to some kind of a realization about our own thoughts and such because it's all there aren't
Yep.
any facts as you'd put into a scientific survey or something. It's all
Right.
speculative and all experiential.
Right. And it's good to, I encourage people to, um, if they're forming a team or thinking about joining a team, make sure that there's skeptical people, that maybe
Hmm.
you're a believer or a pretty open skeptic to the paranormal, but it's good, you got to have that other end of it, or someone who's very analytical minded,
Hmm.
data driven. It's good to have those contrasts. So, like you said, it makes you stop and think,
Hmm.
re and in some cases, hopefully reevaluate what you're
Hmm.
doing,
Right.
and making sure that you check yourself, you have the right intent for, investigating the paranormal or helping people out with private home cases or psychic readings, whatever it may be. But it's good to have that contrast, and
Hmm.
yeah, to have those people around, because I'm a believer, and it's good to have people who are like, "Well, wait a second, Pete. Let's take another look at this."
Right.
All right. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm a believer and a skeptic, I tell people, because I'm a skeptic about specific incidents. And some
Sure.
of it is I have to know the person, I have to know their ability to analyze and really appreciate the experience or understand the experience they've had. How good are their skills in deductive reasoning, or
Yeah,
I mean
critical
so many
thinking.
different
Sure.
things. Yeah, critical thinking. I mean, just an example, I live in a house that it's not old. Nobody's died in it, and it was built in a field. But I have a lot of activity here, on and off. And I was for a while in one place seeing a square, well, kind of a rectangle of light on a wall high up that I couldn't place or understand. But
Right.
then I figured, okay, there's a clear story window in that bathroom and a skylight and the doors, and I figured out where it was coming through. And even though the size, it was because of angles and everything else that made it
Sure.
small instead of big. And it's like, oh, okay, that's not a ghost. And but you have to check, and you have to check all those things out,
Yeah,
because it's it's easy for something to be something that it's
it
easy
is.
for something to be sound like it's more than it is, or look
Yes.
like it's more than it is.
Sure. Yep. Yeah, you gotta have those kind of checks on yourself too. And like you say,
Mhm.
even in your own house. The house I live in here in Port Gamble, I mean, we've heard some really strange things. I saw a duffel bag come off of my dining room table onto the floor. That was nothing in the duffel bag, so it was just like just really placid. I don't know
Mhm.
what the right word is, but it was
Well, she
just
didn't want you to have that on the table. It didn't belong there.
apparently not. So,
Mhm.
I've had to kind of, try and look at things myself,
I can
um,
see her.
in my own. Oh, that's right on.
So,
I have a hard time seeing who it is. I believe one of the entities that's in my house is, possibly a family member of my wife's,
okay.
based on how he walks in the size and shape and everything.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, it's hard in your own house sometimes, and so that's cool that you found out what that was, just by taking a look.
Hmm.
Um, well, I want to go back to, so you mentioned that the first 3 years the Oregon Coast Conference were in location, and that is Oregon City. So I want to ask you about a little bit about Oregon City, and that's where you're out of, right?
Um, Part of the time, yes. I'm in the Portland area in general, and a lot of time in Oregon City. It's where I went to school, and where I have a lot of contacts and community and stuff. I wasn't born here,
Mhm.
and because I wasn't born here, I don't have to hate West Lynn. It's a competing town across the river, and
Oh, okay.
the two high schools had the longest term rivalry, I think, in the country.
Oh, wow.
Um, it's it, and it goes back to the early founders of the two towns.
Oh,
And
geez.
our founder, Dr. McLaughlin, was lived one day longer. He was a stronger person, and we were also the original capital of the Oregon Territory. And depends on who you talk to of the state. Lots of politics involved. The
Sure.
first incorporated city west of the Mississippi. We were the power center. We have San Francisco's plot map because they incorporated here. I mean,
Uh,
we were because they were Spanish, and then they incorporated here, and because we were the town,
the place to do it.
we were the seat of government, and so we have the ghost to prove it. And
That's awesome.
yeah, and we
So
were a
what
big
you
Native American area as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And so what year was Oregon City established?
Okay, now established and incorporated are different things. We were incorporated in 1844.
Okay.
We were established, I think, the first mill I think went in, Dr. McLaughlin, 1827 or 29,
Wow.
and and then with that came the Hudson's Bay Company trading post, and then settlement and such a bit around that. And we were the end of the Oregon Trail, so the late 30s and early 40s were when we really started taking off.
That's the 1830s and 1840s.
Yes.
Yeah, you got Port Gamble beat by 9 years.
Okay.
Although Port Gamble never incorporated, since
Yeah.
it was a company town and still
hmm
is. But I I just love places with some history, and especially mill towns, and that started as a mill town. I feel a kindred spirit there. It's just a neat place.
Well,
Um,
until our mill in Oregon City closed down a few years ago, we had the oldest continually operating industrial site in, I think, in the Northwest. Definitely
wow.
in the state, but I think
Yeah.
in the Northwest. I'm
Yeah.
not quite sure. We've also got the second largest waterfall by volume in North, well, at least in the U.S., if not North America. It's not tall, but when it looks, when you consider volume, Niagara is the only one bigger,
Yeah.
and the second longest northerly flowing river in the world. And we had the first long distance electrical power transmission in the country. And I've also heard that it wasn't just a country, but in the world. I'm not sure about that part. But it's an area of a lot of firsts. We've got an
Yeah. And
interesting history.
yeah, and just I mean, just for the age of it on the West Coast is
hmm
just I find that just fascinating. Like I understand, like with Port Gamble's history, starting in 1853 here, um, people on the East Coast were like, yeah, that's nothing. We've got
Right.
way older stuff. But for the West Coast, I mean, that's pretty amazing.
hmm
And to be on that kind of the edge of the earth, basically, at that time, the edge of
Right.
land,
hmm
and people couldn't really go any farther. Um, much farther, it's the end of the Oregon Trail. So it's just always fascinated me. And,
hmm
there's a house there that's got a pretty important history to the Northwest and Oregon, and the Ermitinger House.
Right.
And so tell us a little bit about that, because when you're done with that, I'll tell you about something I saw there, and I didn't even go in.
Okay. Um, that'll be interesting. Now, you can spend hours talking about ghost stories of the Ermitinger House. It's in its third location. We think part of the reason why we have so many ghosts in Oregon City is the houses moved, the graves were moved. It's like, nothing's settled. And and it makes sense because you have, like where the Urban Tinger House is now, when that area first developed, it had large houses with big plots of land, not sections like you would with farming and that kind of thing, but large farms with big plots of lands. And then you subdivide the land, you put in streets, and the houses get moved to reflect the new planning and that kind of thing.
Sure.
And when you've got cemeteries on Main Street, you dig them up when that's no longer a church, and at least you say
Move
you
it.
dig them up.
Yeah.
Whether or not you actually do, it can be a little debated. But the Ermatinger House was built in 1843. We know it was there by 1843. It could have been a little earlier, but officially we say 1843
Okay.
because we found receipts for repair from that date.
Oh, wow.
And it was built for John McLaughlin had the Hudson Bay Company build it for Francis Ermatinger and his wife. His wife was McLaughlin's granddaughter,
Oh, okay.
and there was a bit of an age difference. And the people that came out here, no matter how good and nice they weren't always that good and nice all the way through. You had to be kind of rough and tumble in a sense to make it out here and to want to come out here and
Yeah.
to survive out here, even if you had all the right china and silver, and the wealthy people in Oregon City in those days did. The McLaughlin House table looked just like any mansion's table on the East Coast,
Sure.
but you had to have something going that was something a little on the seedy side, basically, to make it work. And Ermatinger, I think he was honest, but he got in trouble with the Hudson's Bay Company a lot for a lot of reasons. Anyway,
Yeah.
they were only here for like 3 years, and the house was in a boarding house, and it was a rental. It's been all kinds of things, but it's where the city of Portland was named.
Right.
And there was a coin toss. The founders of Portland had cleared all the trees, and so everybody was nicknaming it Stumptown, and that didn't sell property very well. So at a dinner party, they
I wonder why.
best 2 out of 3 of the coin toss, and we became Portland instead of Boston. And the historical society, the State Historical Society, claims to have that coin. I've
Oh,
seen the coin.
nice.
I've seen the coin they claim. Now, how on earth they could know? I mean, maybe these guys set it aside and kept it for
Maybe it sat in a
posterity.
glass case or something for a long time, or yeah.
Yeah, it could be. I'm not going to say it's not true, but it also seems a little strange to me that
It's that specific coin.
yeah. Mhm. But we've had ghost stories. There was a docent in the house that the ghost didn't like. When they first opened the house as a museum, they had a live-in docent, and she'd be upstairs in bed and she'd hear parties and laughter and people talking and music, and there'd be nobody in the house, and she'd hear this coin toss and hit the ground, the floor, the wood or something, and she'd complain about this quite a lot.
Wow.
You'd go into the house and there were these crosses kind of in oil above all the doorways upstairs, not downstairs. And no matter how many times they painted them, they'd come back. And
Really?
we just did $1 million renovation on the house because the city of Oregon City literally let it fall to pieces. We got a grant to get the windows fixed because the glass was falling out of the panes or out of the frames, and they took the windows out, and the second floor dropped about 3 inches.
Oh,
Like the
geez.
windows were the only thing holding the house together.
Oh my gosh.
They did a quick evacuation,
Wow. Yeah. No kidding.
and so it took a lot to fix it. Um, and it's not all city money; there are all kinds of partners
Sure.
from all over the place.
Sure.
And I'm on the friends group. I'm a a board member with the Friends group, and so I'm a little biased. We used to do a lot of living history and stuff there, but we've had, I mean, even when we were writing that grant, Rocky was a new commissioner. He had his city laptop, which is new. I had a new portable printer that I'd never had a problem with. None of our electronics would work.
Oh,
And we just
geez.
kind of looked at each other and said, "Do you want us to fix the house or not?" And everything worked.
You just had to lay the law down to him.
Yeah, or it's the little girl loves ribbons. She, they're two different children, a boy and a girl, have been seen out of upstairs windows
Okay.
by people, including people I know, and including by the fire department right behind.
Oh,
There,
wow.
there was a chimney on the house that was not attached to anything,
Okay.
but often it didn't matter winter, summer, hot, cold, whatever. You'd see smoke or steam coming out of it. It was white.
Oh,
And
geez.
yeah, night or day, lots of people saw it. I saw it many times myself.
So did the fire officers like go? I mean, were they always going over there to check, and then, or they just kind of after a while got used to it? And,
Yeah, because I mean, this was coming out the chimney. There wasn't any fire. And they at times were known to have said that it can burn down and we'd be quite okay with that. Um, because the house had a reputation.
sure.
Chairs move. The current city employee has had chairs move, other things move. Things aren't where she put them, and
Okay.
especially with the lockdown right now, there's nobody in the house except for her, and because it's not open to the public, and um, it's it's a mystical place. There used to be a doll that would be in different places upstairs in the children's room, and the little girl ghost loves ribbons.
Right.
And,
I want to go there sometime. That would be so cool. I want to get in there
and
and check it out.
when you do,
Just for the history of it.
when you do, you have to make sure I give you the tour.
Okay. Yeah. Well, of course.
Hmm.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. So, how long? When was it opened as a museum?
In the 80s, I don't know. I wasn't living around here at the time,
Okay.
um, or at least not in town at the time. There had been a police station on the location. It was in an old house, pretty nice old house. And there were some things that happened in the police station. So they tore down that beautiful old house and moved in the old house on top of the site where the
The police
police station
station.
had been. And that's part of why the house had so many problems. I think it wasn't set up right and moved right,
Yeah.
because they knew about the footprint of that old house. They knew
Hmm.
about underground water. All the other houses didn't have a problem, but why this one? Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it was shoddy contractors. And I'm not going to say for sure. I don't want to get sued, but that's my humble
Good job.
opinion, just based on supposition.
Yeah.
But so it was sometime in the 80s then that it was set up. Mrs. Powers, I believe her name was, bought that house and the Ainsworth House, and I
Ooh.
think the Foster Farm. She
Oh,
bought
really?
a few of the historic places and turned them into museums, and some of them are still museums, some of them aren't. The Ainsworth House
Yeah.
isn't anymore. But she saved some of these. The Rose Farm was another one, which is where the first territorial governor was sworn in, the first territorial ball and inauguration. And
Wow.
you know, that was right by where I went to junior high. And um, she saved these historic places. And I'm a trustee with the organization that owns the Rose Farm, too. So you kind of get sucked into some of these things.
Hey, if you feel it's something you gotta be a part of, then by all means,
Mhm.
you
Yeah,
know,
I mean, it's important.
yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
So with the Ermitinger house, Like I said, I've only seen the outside. I've
Hmm.
never gone in, and I think when I saw it, it must have been. And in fact, I think I probably couldn't have gone in because I think it was when they were like what you're talking about with the floor dropping. I
Hmm.
remember that there was something going on with the house that was like needed to be fixed or something.
Okay.
Uh, but anyways, I from across the road, um, looking facing the house on the right hand side, there was like kind of a I don't know. It was like it was I don't know, not like a tower but there was like a little something that stuck up out of the roof maybe, or it was kind of on the side of the house,
Were you at
maybe
the
right
back
next.
or the front?
I think I
The front has
remember
pillars.
after. What's
The
that?
front has square pillars in the. And
Okay, so it was the back,
okay, and
and
there's a back piece that sticks up. The roof of the main house is
yeah,
flat, but this part has a peaked roof.
yeah, and there was like maybe some vents or slats or like a small opening or something that was I could see.
There are a couple
Uh,
windows and a door there,
yeah,
a small door, not a full-size one.
and so what I got a quick glimpse of that kind of disturbed me at first was somebody hanging from a rope through that I could see through that opening. And
Really?
I thought it was a police officer that had hung himself. Um, I don't.
Oh my God.
it it really disturbed me when I saw it.
Oh
So
my God. Now, I don't know if a police officer or if anybody actually hung on that site, but the incident that happened at the police station
uh,
was in the locker room, shower rooms, which were upstairs and at the back, which corresponds to the area you were seeing. And
yeah,
the area you were seeing was the only part of the house that felt really unwelcoming and nasty. Not evil, but just
hmm,
not good. You didn't want to be there.
yeah.
And an officer killed himself there, but he shot himself, is my understanding.
Oh, interesting.
I don't think he
Well,
hung himself. I think he shot himself.
it
But
creeped me out.
I can understand that.
Um,
Actually.
oh,
And
interesting.
and it could have been somebody was, I mean, killed hung themselves in the house that was there beforehand. Could be a combination of the two different pieces
Sure,
together. It could have been simply of an indication of suicide,
a
um,
symbol,
say
like
a symbol
an
with
image,
the
a
officer.
symbol. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
So
Well,
that
it,
would shake you up, especially if you aren't used to having those kind of visions.
and it was right that at that time in my life I was having that all that craziness going on
Hmm.
uh, at the Oregon Ghost Conference. Um, and yeah, I just remember I was just looking at the house, just kind of, from a distance and checking
Hmm.
it out. And I just saw like somebody hanging from a rope through this opening.
Hmm.
And I felt like it looked like a police officer's uniform, kind of
Yeah.
like the tan style of uniform or beige, kind of
Okay.
style of uniform to me.
Fascinating.
So,
Yeah.
wow. Well, yeah. Maybe I don't want to go in there now. No, I'm just kidding. That'd
Actually,
be
that
great.
area anymore doesn't feel the same way. It feels
Oh, good.
it
Maybe
feels fine.
they moved on. Maybe.
Yeah, and he wasn't stuck there anyway. It was that energy and such that was there.
Yeah.
It's not. It wasn't his soul. Every suicide I've dealt with or worked with has been thriving and very happy on the other
Yeah.
side
Yeah.
and doing really well. But there used to be water in there a lot, shower rooms,
Hmm.
because the roof wasn't leaking, but there'd be water on the floor.
Yeah.
And one of the side windows would open. Nobody'd open it, but you'd have
Yeah.
to go up and close it.
See,
But again, like letting
that's
out steam.
interesting. It's interesting that there's. It sounds like there's I mean, there's a lot of physical movement or
Hmm.
physical a portion of things like water showing up, or
Hmm.
the oil crosses, right?
Yeah,
Um,
I started seeing a little bit of one coming through the last time I was in the house, which was
oh wow.
a few weeks ago.
Well, it'd
Just
be interesting
barely. You
to
had to look for it. I
yeah,
mean, but
sure.
it was starting to come through just a little bit.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting now. Next time you can get in there, definitely let me know if they're back. But
Yeah.
it's interesting that I mean, there's so much physical activity there, and there's just one person that lives there, right? That takes
And
care of the
nobody lives
place.
there anymore. It's
Nobody
just
lives there anymore, so it's
no.
empty. Okay,
Yeah. The it was at the very beginning when it was being run as a museum that there
I
was
see.
a live-in docent. The ghost didn't like her because, in fact, they'd lock her in closets and stuff.
Yeah, that's
Um,
not cool.
no, but it turns out she was selling drugs out of the house to raise bail money for her grandson who was in jail for selling drugs.
Oh my goodness.
That's Oregon City.
I was gonna say, is the house making people crazy? Who
No, I
knows?
mean, it was just crazy. So,
Yeah.
they didn't like her.
You
Um,
know, you just can't write real life, can you?
mm-mm. No, you can't.
That's
And
that's co-
and this was in the 80s. I mean, it just makes, in so
yeah,
many ways, it makes sense.
yeah. That
Um,
makes it even better. That's an
mhm,
'80s story.
yeah. But we have a city staffer that works with the house part time, and she's in it Fridays and Saturdays
Yeah,
on her own, but during the day. And
yeah,
um, and those are the days, and we're also open when we're allowed to
right.
be open. Right
Yeah.
now, with
Well,
life
let me
like
let
not
me
happening.
ask you this. So you mentioned, she's there, with an emphasis on during the day. In, I mean, do you get stuff all day? Do you? Everyone thinks that ghosts only or spirits only come out at night, right? When it's dark. But I mean,
I know
what's
it's
kind of the most active time of the day for you as a medium?
anytime. It's they're here when they're here, and they're around all the time. Nobody's in the Ermitinger house at night. I mean, they have been lately because we've done some events. I've done some classes. Um, the group
Hmm.
and the city are open to talking about and working with the
Hmm.
paranormal aspect of the house. And
That's good.
so, but nobody's been in it alone. I mean,
Yeah.
and we've had activity at night, but lights and chairs and you name it, that's all activity that happens during the day.
Yeah,
And
it just goes to show you it happens anytime during the day. It's just usually
mhm,
during the day we don't notice as much. We just may not notice as many things because of noise pollution, and there's all whatever's going on in your life at the time.
yeah,
So
and it's something to think about too. I was asked to do an investigation once, and I said, okay. The guy that asked me, his team didn't want to go because the place was demonic,
oh
and I
geez.
I roll my eyes at that. But I'm sorry. I don't mean to offend people that are believing in such, and I don't mean it the way that came out. But and I knew
Sure.
the area where the house was, and wasn't too far from where I lived in Portland. And I thought, okay, sure. And he said, great, we'll get there about 11 o'clock at night and spend all night and blah blah blah. And I'm going, oh, that doesn't sound like fun. Because once I get to know whoever the ghosts are, it's like, okay, I'm done. Um, I've
Yeah,
had my conversations, I've made friends, now I can leave.
yeah,
But I said, well, what time does the activity happen? He said from 3 to 6 in the afternoon. And I said, well, why don't we go from 3 to 6 in the afternoon then? He hadn't thought of it.
yeah,
But find out, when the activity is. You don't have to do it at night. I don't
yeah,
like doing it at night with the lights off. It's too easy to run into things.
yeah. That is very true. I'm
Step on a
sure. most paranormal investigators and researchers have some pretty tough shins uh,
Yeah, or
from
step
hitting
through a
things.
floor, a hole in a floor, or who knows what. And
Yeah. And that just
mm-mm.
makes me think, make sure if you're out investigating, your team has a first aid kit
Yep.
and a safety kit with you just for
Hmm.
that. What William was just saying, you could step through a floor or you step in a hole and you could be in a world of trouble. So if
Oh,
you're
I
out
have a,
there, if you're
I have
listening
a,
out there and you're out investigating, you don't have a first aid kit or any sort of safety items, there's resources out there for paranormal safety. Just Google that paranormal safety, and
mhm.
you'll find some good resources on that, and put a good kit together to have there.
And
Yeah,
don't
go ahead.
don't do places alone. I have a friend that a good friend of mine in England, and he was exploring with another good friend of mine a house just off an old Air Force base, and nobody else was in the house with him. And he went upstairs, and the house had some holes in floors and missing
Yep.
windows and stuff. But he went up into this bedroom and then closed the door behind him, and then noticed the door didn't have a handle on the inside
Oh, you got stuck in there. Oh
on the
no.
second floor. It's not like you could just crawl out and be at the ground
Yeah,
level.
jump out. Yeah,
So fortunately, the other people heard him and came. But if he would have been by himself, this was an area that didn't have cell reception, and
right.
he could have been stuck if he had been on his own. And
Yeah, yeah. But
mm,
yes,
make sure.
yeah. You gotta have somebody that can go with you. I did a location read for 3 different locations one evening,
Hmm.
and it was like 5 hours solid between these three houses, just
That's
getting stuff.
amazing
And
and quite a drain.
it was, but I went on my own, and it was an area that I was unfamiliar with. Um, and the people were cool and they were nice.
Hmm.
You never know what you're getting into though, and so that is extremely valuable advice to never go investigate alone. Because yeah, what if you get stuck in a room somewhere in an abandoned building and
Hmm.
nobody hears you? Um,
Or what
so
if you wind up meeting up with shady characters? If you don't know, if you're going to a home and
right,
you don't know the people personally well, make sure you take somebody with you and make sure people know where you're going,
yeah,
just in case. I mean,
yeah,
I try not to be overly um, afraid of everybody, but there are some whack jobs out there.
yeah. Well, usually the scariest things on a paranormal investigation are the living,
That's right.
the dead. So
Yeah.
I'm not usually worried about the dead, um, or the
You know,
breathing impaired. I heard.
yep. The
um,
paranormal people beings are usually fine. It's
yeah,
the rest of them that are
you never,
have to
you never
wonder
know.
about.
Box
That's
of
right.
chocolates.
Hmm.
Box of chocolates. Um,
Ooh, that sounds good. I could use some nice chocolate. Anyway, sorry about that.
squirrel. No.
Hmm.
um, chocolate does sound good.
Yeah.
So, kind of as you're talking about, go meeting with shady characters, or just make sure you're being safe. Now, as a medium, a psychic medium, you've been you've been doing this for quite some time,
Right.
and you've got to experience a lot of really interesting things, and you've done quite a bit of world traveling. And
A
so
bit.
I want to ask, like, in one of your trips to England,
Hmm.
um, now not shady living people, did you ever come across any spirits, entities that were kind of nasty, or that you were maybe a little nervous about? Did you experience any of that in England?
Actually, no.
All right.
And you know, in Malmesbury at the Old Bell, the oldest purpose-built hotel in England, I saw the gray lady, the lady in black. She was more real than real, actually. She was right next to me. I was looking straight, and she was on the staircase right here. So I didn't see
Yeah.
all of her figure because I was afraid to turn. If I turned my head, she would leave, or vanish right away. So I kept like that. So, but you could smell the dress even.
Oh
And
wow.
the next year, I stayed at that hotel. They put me in her room where she'd killed herself. Peaceful, nothing.
Right.
Um, I've been. I haven't come across anything. I've watched rituals. I've watched sacrifices. I've seen people I know, including me, as part of those things in past lives. I've seen all this stuff, but I didn't ever come across. Usually, I wander around awestruck and hoping I don't step on an adder.
I'm sure.
They have
So
them there, and they're not very nice.
so when you say um, you've seen a ritual or a sacrifice, I mean, are you're seeing it psychically?
Yeah,
Um,
mhm,
not with your eyes, but you're seeing it psychically.
right.
Now,
It's
when
here.
you're doing that, are you trying to focus on any one thing, or are you just when you start to see something, um, you
I
know,
focus on what the
what do you
site
do?
wants.
What do you do?
I I open up and focus and allow whatever the site wants to show me to come through. And
So more of like
sometimes
just more of just you're just really receiving, not trying to
exactly,
put stuff
exactly.
out there. You're just receiving. Interesting.
Because I'm interested in history. I'm interested in seeing what's going on. What did it really look like and such? And of course, like so many things I can't prove. Some things I can. Um, you go into the museum afterwards or in the different thing, and they'll have that fits and says exactly. Other times you can't, but
Hmm.
um, I open to look, and often it has something that's relevant to me personally. What's
Okay.
shown to me.
But like
Often they
what?
show past life.
Right, right. So I mean, do you think that there's a correlation to if something that you're more passionate about, you may tend to um, you know, you see like that aspect of a historical time, psychic replay, a psychic, a vision that you're seeing. Will you kind of more focus in on the things that you would be more interested in that time?
No, because some of these places have histories where they've been used. I'm thinking of Avebury, and which actually goes back to about 3000 BC. It's a little older than Stonehenge. Stonehenge, um, it was started in the Neolithic 2500, 2600 BC, and then
Right.
used for 1,000 years into the Bronze Age. Um,
That's crazy to me.
burial, burial mounds and burial cairns and such, and they have such a long history. Whatever they want to show me,
Hmm.
and so much of it we don't have a lot of evidence for what they were used for, and there's
Right.
speculation that matches what I've come up with, but not necessarily hardcore fact. And
Nothing that's been discovered yet, but it seems like they're always discovering something new.
mhm.
You
And
know.
some of it I'd like to find out a little bit more about.
Yeah.
I want to do some more research about a name, something in Exeter that a friend of mine and I were both picking up together.
Okay.
Um, it is a little bit of a shock when you're sitting in the pub Francis Drake used to hang out in, and then you look out the window and he's looking in at you. But it wasn't scary. It's the middle of the afternoon. You're in for lunch, and
Right.
it wasn't scary, but it was just there. Look out, then he's gone, and you look around outside, and there's nobody there.
And you're like, huh,
But
was that a cosplay person or
yeah, and Drake had a pretty unique face and
yes.
mug about him. He was he was one that would stand out in the crowd.
Did he have the big hat on?
I don't remember exactly.
Okay.
Um, that was in 2014, and he may have, but I didn't. I just saw the bit that I could
Yeah.
see through
Yeah.
the glass. That
So
that wasn't bottle glass type thing.
so would you say now you studied history? You're a student of history.
Right.
Would you
I
say
have
the
a bachelor's.
Neolithic, European history is something that's, what's kind of your favorite era of history that you've studied?
The further back, the better. The Mesopotamian societies, civilizations,
Okay.
the Fertile Crescents, the places I can't get to because they're throwing bombs and bullets at each other.
That's where
Those are
you
my
want to
favorite.
be.
That's where I
That's where you
really
want to be.
want to be.
Yeah.
So the
Okay.
closer I can get to those, the better.
Right.
Um,
And you've spent some time in Turkey and Egypt.
yep,
Talk a little bit about your experiences in Egypt, because if you don't follow William on Facebook, when he goes on his travels, there's lots of neat photos that he'll post while along his travel, and so it's almost like you can kind of go there with him. But
yep.
talk a little bit about some of what you experienced and some of um, your favorite stuff about what you saw and experienced. And but before we do that, I'll just take a second and say it's a Paranormal Pete show. We're on episode 7 here with William Becker on Let's Talk Radio. That's WLTKDB.com. And my guest tonight, William Becker, is a good friend of mine. And I also want to make sure and get this out there. Definitely check out paranormalinsights.net. And that's William's website. And he does a lot more than just world traveling, although I'm sure that's what he'd like to do the most of.
That's
Uh,
true. This
but
problem called money.
yeah, yeah, that darn thing. But
Yeah,
he's a psychic medium who does readings and mentors psychic coaching. He teaches classes and workshops and specialty tours. Um, and with he's got a good, strong emphasis on history, and which is, I think, is super important in the paranormal. So I just want to take a second to put that out there,
I
so make
appreciate
sure
it. Thank
people
you.
can find you
Thank you.
if they want to learn more. So, anyways, we were just talking about you getting to visit Egypt. And so, yeah, sure. Tell us a little bit about what it was like, and what you experienced and what you liked about
Lots and lots of heat is part of what I experienced. And I
it.
was there in late May and June. Um,
That's pretty hot.
that was, I mean, it's 107 in the shade and there isn't any. Um, Egypt is amazing. Now, I'd like to have taken a tour that it was billed as a history tour. It was a great tour, but we didn't get quite as much as we wanted. Actually, I'll just say a couple of things right now before we get into the locations. If you want to go to Egypt, my suggestion is you get a good travel agent and you book a very good, reliable tour through a very reliable tour company. You will be disappointed in what you don't get to see, but that's life whenever you're traveling. It's impossible to see everything you want to see.
Sure.
But Egypt, well, let's just say when we were in Cairo, um, every time we left the hotel sent an armed guard with us. Looked like a
Oh,
Secret Service guy.
yeah.
And half of my trip was on a Nile cruise, and we didn't have we didn't have armed guards visible, at least on the boat. There may
Uh-huh.
have been there. I don't know if some of the staff had was trained that way, but there was
Sure.
nothing we saw. But everywhere we went in the motor coaches, and we were a small group, um, every village had armed guards. There were checkpoints and barricade things in the roads you had to go through and around all the
Okay.
time. There were times when we had an armed jeep with a bunch of people with guns escorting us to the site and back.
How how
Um,
how did that? I mean, did that kind of just put you on edge, or how did you feel about that?
Actually, I really liked it because
Okay.
nobody looked stressed.
Okay.
The people were laughing. They were having a good time. I've got a great picture of one of the armed guards on the dock area where we were docked one time outside. His his gun is propped up against next to him, and he's sitting there sound asleep early in the morning. Um, and with this too, we stayed in this 5-star hotel. You could use ice. You could
Okay.
have an ice drink.
Uh-huh.
Um, you could eat a green salad. Things like that. The
Yeah.
same kind of thing on the ship. Um, the hygiene was good. The water was good. They never give you enough bottled water. And always make sure, never, if you're buying water from a vendor or something, never let them unscrew it. You unscrew the top and make sure that it's the seal is there. You know how it's
So that
perforated
they can just
around?
refill it.
Exactly. Um,
That is a great travel trip. Everyone out there listening, when it's safe to travel,
mhm.
no matter where
Because
you're at, don't let people open your water for your bottled water for you. That's a great tip, William. I'd have never
yeah,
thought of
and um, and I've got it from people who have lived in Egypt and stuff at times.
that.
And even then, you still wind up getting a bit of the touches, something here or there.
Yeah.
I did, and they have great pills that the guide gives you that takes care of it, and it works really well. And but a guide knows how to keep you safe, knows the information, and it costs a little bit more, but your experience, I think, is a whole lot better and a lot worth it. You
Yeah.
don't want to shoot. You don't even want to try to cross the street, let alone drive over there. I
Yeah.
mean, things like using headlights at night are optional. Most people don't because they don't want to. And
Yeah.
that's not just in Cairo where you've got lots of lights. It's in little places.
Yeah.
Um, it's
That's kind of wild.
it's just very different, and people wanting money from you every time you turn around. I started getting pretty angry actually about it,
Yeah.
which and I had compassion. I understood tourism was down and all the rest of it, but it got to be too much.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I can imagine that, and even as, empathic as you are, you soak up all those people's stress and stuff as you're walking around, and I can imagine it would make me I would get upset too, I think, you know,
yeah,
just and
yeah.
I'd lose my patience, but well, so I mean, I know you didn't see a mummy or anything like that, but or maybe one that
Yeah,
was
actually, I
moving.
did. I saw lots of them.
Did you see any that were moving?
No, but I did see King Tut sit up out of his coffin a few times to show me how his soul raised out of his mummy.
Oh, interesting. Just
Because
how
his
it exits.
sarcophagus, yeah, his sarcophagus was in his tomb at the time, and I honestly don't remember if his mummy was in the sarcophagus or not. Seems like it was, because it
Mhm.
seems like I saw the mummy in the tomb, but I'm not going to swear which eye I saw it with. These two or this one,
Okay.
you know,
Okay. Sure.
um,
Sure.
because I saw the spirit rise out of it. It was like
Yeah.
sitting up, and it did it 3 times for me.
Yeah. Now, in your work as a psychic, I mean, especially when you're in some of these really historical places, I mean, are you more what's kind of your strong clair that information comes in? What's kind of the strong one for you?
Oh, it just depends. A lot of it I'm
I like
shown things. Yeah, because I everything they all work, and usually it's visual with an understanding that goes with it. Sometimes you can hear in the mind what
that.
is going on with it. Um, in places like this, there are always distractions, and you never have enough time. I had 15 minutes in each of the 4 tombs in the Valley of the Kings that we went to. That was it.
Yeah, yeah, that goes by.
Um, yeah, so you're limited into what you can really, really do. But
Mhm.
um, lots of visual, lots of storytelling, and a certain amount of understanding. Some of it directly talking to me as well,
Yeah.
um, telepathically,
Hmm.
psychically, more than audibly. And since I
Yeah.
don't speak Egyptian or Arabic, it's good that that's telepathic because you know you're
Yeah.
reading the thought and the intent. You're not reading the language,
Yeah.
and so that makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Exactly. Um, so, I mean, did you have any sort of physical experience or something physical, anything like that that you noticed? Not as much psychical, but maybe was there any sort of other experience in Egypt or I guess Turkey? Because you went to some pretty cool places there. Uh,
yeah, pretty
you know,
much
where
most of
a physical experience.
like actually seeing an apparition or something
Yeah,
like
or
that.
hear like, a disembodied voice, anything like
Hmm.
that or
Um, I'm not going to say for sure about a disembodied voice. Probably, I'm not quite sure. I hear them a lot, and so
yeah,
they don't always register anymore.
sure.
And there are so many sounds and sights going on all the time anyway that a lot of times I don't pay attention and I don't notice them.
Right.
Um, so that's a little hard. And sometimes I forget to pay attention. First of all, I have to close my mouth because my jaw's on the ground because I'm in this place that I've always wanted to be.
Yeah,
I'm seeing these things that I've wanted to see since I was old enough to hold the National Geographic on my own. Couldn't
right.
read the words, but could look at the pictures.
Yeah,
And um, so sometimes I have to remember to turn on.
yeah,
But then you can see the workmen, the scribes painting the prayers.
yeah,
You can see the workmen chiseling the reliefs. You can see the people working on the statues. You can see everything,
yeah,
um, at least in flashes and bits and pieces. You could see the priests that knew that this was all a matter of money and power and control, and it didn't really exist, but the public needed it.
right.
They expected it, and and also then partly because it was it was to keep the public happy, but also to keep some concept of civil unity and civilization as a people, a culture.
An order.
Hmm. You could see other ones that believed it. You could see people in the crowds that believed and those who didn't but understood the purpose. You could
Yeah,
see the ones that were from other places, in the past,
right.
and what they were doing because you'd have the conversation with them and they were there.
Yeah.
Um, and I wish I could read the living, judge, get the feelings from the living as far as character and everything else as well as I do out of the dead. Um,
You probably have a leg up in life if you had that, right?
well, I sure would have made some better choices at times in my life. Um, but it's well, part of my philosophy is the more we can see and understand the world around us, the fuller and richer life is. And
Mhm.
so much of that world is a world that isn't really manifest in our own time and space and dimension. And we need our psychic abilities to see and experience that.
Right.
And
And
it's
learn.
not the same as a lived thing, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Life
Yeah.
wasn't all that great in any of these places at any of these times.
I was just going to ask if you learned anything from visiting these historical sites and getting some, clairvoyance on what's going on, or being able to see in the past. Have you learned anything other than times probably weren't that great?
That I knew anyway. Um, Actually, you can get a sense of some of the suffering, but also some of the things that we think of would be suffering but aren't. I mean, people used to think that the slaves built the pyramids and the temples, or the burial tombs and stuff, and it's not true. They were highly skilled stonemasons
Hmm.
and such that were well fed and well taken care of, and made their money this way. And you weren't hauling big stones over long periods. They moved the Nile, they build channels and
Right.
float things in close. And
Yes.
um, so there's stuff like that. And learning, and I can't, I have no way of proving if I'm right, but the sense of some people understood, especially some of the people in power and in the priesthood, but not just that, but some of the more well educated people
Hmm.
of the society understood that so much of the ritual and everything was about cultural unity and about not reality with the gods.
Right.
And one of the things that I find everywhere is that although you don't need ritual to get into that sacred core space, ritual, it didn't matter if it's a Catholic mass
Hmm.
or uh, a Neolithic ceremony in a stone circle or an Egyptian rite or what.
Hmm.
If they're done well, they can take you there too if you're open and ready to go. But you
Yeah.
don't need them to go. You can go there on your own. Actually, a lot easier than the ritual can.
Sure. So,
And
well, let me ask you, William. I mean, can anybody, in your opinion, can anybody learn to look into the history like that?
I think so. That's one of the things I really like to help teach and work with people on in
Yeah.
developing that. Um,
Yeah, and I'll say, I've taken your class, a couple times. I've helped teach the class with you
yeah,
too.
we've done some great co-teaching. I love it.
Yeah. Well, thank you. um, so I've been trying to ask all my medium friends that I have on the show what their opinion is. I think if anybody, anybody can learn to do this, and so far unanimously, including my own opinion, is yes.
Hmm.
That everybody has these gifts in them. It's just a matter of finding them and recognizing them,
Right.
you know.
I think so.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So, anybody, listening out there, you're not quite sure how it works or how could you do it? How well, I couldn't do that, I used to think that.
Yeah.
I can't do
Look at
that.
you.
Um, yeah, look at me, weirdo now. No, I'm just kidding.
I've always had a corrupting influence.
Yes. So, if you're listening out there, I mean, everybody can learn to do this. And, there's some easy ways to do it. Look up classes, try and find, um, you know, a reputable person, check out reviews. If you're in the Northwest, you can, William does stuff. When I'm sure when COVID has less of an impact on things, we'll all be doing more events and there'll be more
Right.
resources. And so
And
keep,
I teach online.
yeah,
Um,
and virtual classes right now and everything.
mhm.
And
I give
uh,
readings online, with a visual call or something.
yeah, that's,
Uh,
we're all rolling with it and
mhm.
get working that way. And I think a lot of mediums can work remotely anyways.
Right.
Um,
And even over the phone, it works. It's just for me, it's a little easier, a little bit nicer if I can see the person.
I would
Um,
I would agree with that.
mhm.
But yeah, I mean, everybody, if you put a little bit of time into it, I think everybody does have they have some sort of gift.
Yeah.
Everybody's a little different, as far as how they get information or receive information. One of the easiest things is feeling, the empath.
Mhm.
the empath part, but and once you can recognize what energy, electromagnetic field, or electromagnetic resonance, or whatever you want to call a ghost or whatever it is, once you
Mhm.
feel it and can recognize what's different in your body and how it feels, you'll recognize it in the future moving forward.
Right. And you can keep track of how your brain feels. Just how do you receive things and how that differs from your imagination. And
Right.
then keep track of the things you can confirm. I
Yes.
mean, when you keep a diary, keep something, and when you've got something confirmed, write it down that it
Yes.
was confirmed. If you can't confirm it one way or another, put that down. If you are shown that what you picked up is wrong, put that down. And what's wrong about it? Because sometimes we'll get an image. Well, like we were talking with, you saw the guy hanging. Was it that he hung, or was this now an image for a suicide? Or
Sure.
is it a combination of two people, two different events, or
Yep.
just what?
Well, and then you add the seer or the person
Mhm,
experiencing it in there too, and then I could have perceived something that was totally different than was actually going on right there. But that's how I
mhm,
perceived it. So yeah,
exactly.
exactly. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, but definitely, I encourage people to work with people. Um, I had different people I've worked with exploring and stuff
Hmm.
a lot of my life. Formal teachers, not a lot, some, but you can wind up you can wind up with a lot of, I want to say garbage, but I don't want to, you know, you can wind up with a lot of stuff hanging
Yes.
on to you that isn't necessarily helpful if
Right.
you don't have some ideas about what you're doing.
Yep.
And
And that's where it's important to work with somebody who has some experience that can
mhm,
help teach you about grounding and centering and cleaning yourself off. And what William's, I think, referring to of garbage or whatever that gets stuck to you is energy, other people's energy, the dead or the living. But
I
you
think
know,
that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
yeah, it's you're just kind of you're a sponge for
Hmm.
energy, and once you soak up as much as you can handle, then it starts to build up, and then then it just gets worse and worse and worse.
Hmm.
So having somebody who can teach you about grounding and kind of hitting the refresh button on your energy in your soul,
Hmm.
to that kind of helps clean all that stuff off of you. And
Right.
William, you've when I first met you and taken a class, you had a different approach to, because I think a lot of people when they're wanting to learn about psychic work, or opening themselves, or they want to be a psychic, and so they'll maybe take a night school course or whatever it might be.
Uh-huh.
I think the impression is always you have to meditate and you have to there's this connotation of meditation to be a psychic, and
Hmm.
you had a different approach to that, which just it made sense to me, and I've carried it forward too. And what is introduced to me by you, and it was called hyper focus, or just the thinking of, well, I mean, who can easily meditate? I
Hmm.
Not a lot of people. The majority of people, I think, have a. I mean, what about you out there, the listeners out there? Can you just meditate really easy? Um, I would venture to say no. Most people, my brain doesn't turn off. But the concept that you introduced me to was to go with it. If your brain is, going, as fast as it usually does, just go with it, and then just kind of Okay, I'm seeing this. It's weird. Whatever. My brain's telling me to see this. Now, what details do I see? And then you start to build, you know, off of that and details, and then before you know it, you're in the same place that you would have taken you a long time trying, and frustration of trying to
Mhm.
meditate, by just going with your thoughts and letting them go where they may, but then focusing on detail and detail and detail and kind of niching down. And it's that just kind of always stuck with me, and I've carried it forward just because it makes sense. And
Yeah,
uh,
thank you. And the other part to that, though, is that's really good as far as helping for a vision or something, or these pieces to come. But the other part then too is when it's just monkey mind, as it's called, just acknowledge it and let it go.
yeah,
And I mean, meditation isn't emptying your mind, it's releasing what's coming mostly. Um,
right.
because shoot, I have ADHD. I mean,
I think we all do in some way, right?
yeah, the squirrel never stops.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
I mean, it was still running at 3 a.m. this morning when I been in bed for a few hours trying to sleep.
Yeah,
Um, and so that's another piece to go with it. It's kind of the flip side of the piece
yeah,
you said, and it's you figure out when to do which. It comes, it feels right, it's natural.
right.
Your instincts tell you,
Yeah,
and there are so many different forms of meditation. As far as
yeah.
Vipassana is what I started out with,
Hmm.
and um, that took me to another form that's basically the same but had different pieces to it.
Yeah,
And now when I do sit, it's each time is different. It's
yeah,
whatever it's supposed to be. And
yeah.
don't get hung up on experiences, especially when you're new at it, because you'll have some things happen that are pretty amazing and pretty incredible.
Hmm.
Um, and as you keep learning and developing and growing, those things might not happen anymore. They're parts of awakening and awareness.
Yep.
And um, you don't want to hang on to what was. You want to be constantly open to what is.
Right. Or what's coming, and
Hmm.
yeah,
And so don't hold yourself back by trying to repeat experiences.
exactly. That's a great point. Don't get stuck on one thing, because as in regular human life, you're always learning, your perspective changes, everything just kind of changes naturally over time for the
Hmm.
individual. So don't get stuck on one thing. And so anybody listening out there, if you've been, thinking about looking into opening yourself, or maybe you're, just kind of getting into it and had some crazy experiences or whatever, if you're having troubles trying to focus, try the idea of, going with the monkey brain.
Hmm.
Accepting it and being able to release that, by focusing on details. And one thing that I've told, clients and other students too, is, it's a little different for everybody. Everyone's brains are going to go to a different type of thing, but whatever it is, maybe try and start with visualizing a landscape first. If you're wanting to
Hmm.
get in the zone, the quote unquote zone, whatever. I found that it helps if your mind is going a million miles an hour and you're trying to just slow down and focus and be in the present and really feel, everything around you. Then it's a lot easier if you can start by building visualizing a landscape first. Where does your brain want to take you? Is it a forest? Is it a concrete jungle? Is it, a lake? Wherever it might be, start with that, and then start looking around with your mind, for any details and notice those details, and then just keep niching down on those. And like I said,
Mm-hmm.
before you know it, you might get kind of a funny sensation that goes, from your head to your toes, and you're in a place then where you can talk to your own consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
and just,
That's right.
yeah, I feel like you have. I mean, don't you feel like you have to look inward before you can look outward in some ways?
I'm trying to decide if it's inward before outward or if you do both simultaneously. Because when you're looking inward, you're looking outward at the same time.
Sure.
For me, when I go inward, particularly, it's into this place. I call it a fourth dimension. It's a universe inside of us that is part of the connected universe, and it's so much more than us.
Yeah.
And so going in there is out of me, but in me, if that
Okay.
makes any sense. Um,
Sure. You know my thinking, William. Anything's
yeah,
possible.
yeah. And another thing you can try too now with this Vipassana, it's awareness meditation. It's focusing on the breath usually,
Yeah.
or you could have a word or something, and you look at the detail,
Yeah.
and then you could use a, a line or a phrase of something meaningful for you, and
Yes.
just focus on those words. Or you can focus on a question that you might have.
And you may
Um,
receive an answer. Right.
exactly. There are
Yep.
lots of different kinds of things that you can use for a focus, and sometimes it's the one that comes to you, sometimes it's one that you bring with you, and
Right.
sometimes you start out with one and go with something else that comes to you,
Exactly.
because that's what we think in our minds that we know what it is we need from a session or what we want to learn or be, but
Mm.
our connection, I don't want to use the word subconscious, which is kind of how it feels, but our connection to that larger universe
Mhm.
will come in and direct us a lot of times.
Yeah, our
For
connection
something else.
our connection to spirit, and like you said, the universe, I think there's something to that. One thing I've heard I've seen you teach on it and speak about it, kind of talks to that, being connected with the bigger universe out there.
Hmm.
And we almost kind of touched on it when you were talking about the pyramids, and that they were built by very skilled stonemasons.
Hmm.
And now I think that's where the Freemasons are born, right? Back then.
I don't know. I've
Okay.
been trying to look up some of that, and I
From what
think
I
I,
what
I
I
think
understand,
uh-huh.
it's from that time. And the so I was going to kind of jump into your thoughts on the Akashic record.
Okay.
It's, I think, if I remember correctly, and going off my head here, so if you're listening out there and I'm wrong, my
Uh-huh.
apologies, but going off memory, from some conversations I've had with certain people, um, but that there was the Acacians, or um, the acacia tree, which is where the first Mason, he was murdered, and they couldn't find his body. His fellow Masons couldn't find his body or something, and then they got the Acacia people, and they helped them find this, who became the first Freemason, or way back when. And
Google
I believe
search
it was,
says the Freemasons were founded in 1717 AD.
well, the go back farther.
Yeah. No, I think
I
I think you're right.
I could be wrong, but anyways, I wanted to talk about the Akashic record, and I just remember learning about some connection with the Akashic record, and
Hmm.
people in Egypt around the time when the pyramids were being built. I think they were called the Acacians. Um, but so, what is the? I mean, what is it to you, the Akashic record? What is it? I mean, a lot of people may not have heard of it. I think it's really interesting.
The Akashic Record to me is a place that's the seat of all knowledge, of all that is, and we have access to it. Um, and we each have our own book, and a lot of our existence is in that. But we have access to other things as well. Now, one of the things we have there is a guide, and I always go and talk to my guide there. His name's Robert, and I ask my guide, I ask Robert what it is I need to see, or where is it that I need to go, because there's so much there that I could go off on, or if I have a particular place or particular something I want to do or go or see, then I'll ask about that.
Right.
And that includes working with non-human beings, elemental, for lack of a better word. A lot of the metaphysical creatures or creatures of folklore, or something that I have had experience with physically, not just metaphysically, and seem to be interdimensional,
Okay.
exist in other places and come back and forth through here, which explains why we don't have the same contact. I mean, it explains a lot of things about the
Yeah.
myths and legends and why we don't find remains and things like that.
So, do you think that accessing, the seat of knowledge, you mentioned that you have a guide that works with you. Um, I like that you also mentioned again that you're asking what is it that I need to see? Because I'll
Hmm.
tell you, I've tried to expand my experience and my journey to, you know, what can I learn from that? How do I access it? Everything. And it's something I've always kind of struggled with. And I think it's probably, I mean, it's just kind of dawning on me now that it's because I'm trying to go see. I'm trying to seek the answers, but maybe more of it needs to be more of I need to listen and
Right.
what do I need to be shown? And I think that that's an important thing. And I hope people listening out there, if you're sensitive or empathic, psychic medium, psychic, whatever it is. I think that's a great point to always remember, and I think it's easy to forget is to we're there to communicate sometimes, but it's more we're there to receive this knowledge, receive this information
Hmm.
when it's supposed to happen.
Exactly, and that's part of why I asked too, is the timing and making sure that's right. If people jump in without the right timing, they can get themselves into a bit of a mess. I mean, just
Hmm.
um, mentally, physically, what kind of beings you start collecting around you. I took a little break from a lot of the work because I didn't have healthy people around me that was working with
Right.
psychic work and metaphysical things in general. And I was, having all these little black things flying around my apartment, and that wasn't evil or anything, but it was like, nah, let's get rid of all this, and then we'll start again. We'll expand again later. But
Yeah.
I was also visiting friends of mine that had a very haunted house and a very haunted location, and I mean, shoot, I'd drive home from their house, and every night when I'd drive home, there'd be this figure in the back, just seat in my car, just grinning. I quit
You're right.
walking. Yeah, I quit walking there because it was and I was in my 20s, and so I hadn't come nearly as far with this work, and
Mm.
so I would get more uncomfortable, and um, it was there was just too much going on, and a lot of
Yeah.
it was non-human energy up there that and it was like, no, I'm not gonna
Yeah.
walk there anymore. At
Yeah.
least not at night. During the daytime, it was okay.
So, I mean, when you were kind of experiencing that, was that kind of some of the first times where you're thinking, hey, and there's got to be some limits to this, and I got to be able to turn it off when I need to, or like, how did you take, getting kind of creeped out, and did you take it as a learning experience, or
Yeah. And
yeah,
I learned ways to have the hitchhiker in my car leave before I got home, and things like that. But as far as what was filling in the apartment and different things,
yeah,
that took a little bit longer, and part of that was disassociating with some of these people, and they're people I liked, and they weren't bad people, and I worked with a bunch of them. And
yeah,
these are days at Portland State and different things, and um, kind of counterculture in a lot of great ways. But I don't want to say misguided, because I'm not going to say that people were unguided, I think is a better word.
got it, yeah,
And so
sure,
then I quit and started learning some more, and then doing things from a more guided place. And some of
yeah,
that was through other people, and some of it was just, it wasn't researching through books.
uh-huh,
I haven't really read much on the subject, um, but mostly because I haven't wanted to have somebody tell me how it's supposed to be done, because
you
there is
found
no
your own way.
how. Yeah, everybody's supposed to be
Sure.
done a different way, and it changes over time. It's not
Yeah,
static.
sure.
So
Yeah, I totally agree. Or as you go through time, after you decide you want to be open and that you want to experience things, yeah, it changes how you get things, where it comes from, how it comes in, and I feel like it changes. It's like every couple of years, there's like a shift, at
right.
least for me, that I've been noticing.
Yeah, I've noticed
Uh,
that in you, and even the ways you practice and the way you do things um, around it. It's great. I love it.
oh, thanks. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. You have to be open to change. You have to be
Yes.
open to things not always being the same with psychic work. You have to be willing to accept it and grow with that change. And it can be kind of, it can be stressful if you're, you feel like, you saw stuff really clearly, with clairvoyance, and then now
Mhm.
it's not really coming for you at all, but you seem to be more, sentient, or where you're just getting the information and you just know it, and
Mhm.
but then you're like, well, I'm not seeing things much anymore, and it can kind of stress you out, like, oh, I'm losing this. Well, don't think of it as you're losing something. You're actually gaining somewhere
Mhm.
else.
Mhm.
And if you're being honest with your intent, and having, I guess the best way to say it is just an honest intent with psychic work, you'll grow no matter what. So don't,
Mhm.
as things have changed for you, I mean, do you feel like it's just, it changes there's a positive thing in any
Oh
of the
yeah,
changes? You feel
it's a
like,
growth.
yeah,
Mhm.
you always learning, you know.
Right, and that's part of why I like teaching too. Is I learn when I teach. I can learn from my students,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
just the experience and the energy of being around different people. It
Yeah.
can make it can make a big difference.
Remember when we
And
could be around other people?
yeah, let me see. That was in
Like a year
1980.
ago?
Yeah, Yeah, I
Yeah.
found out today all my travel plans for this spring that were canceled, postponed from last spring, are now shoved off to this coming fall.
Well, fingers
So,
crossed you can. Now, where are you going this time?
um, I've got a National Geographic history tour of Greece
Oh,
that's
awesome.
based on a program, a three-series program they did, 5,000 years of history,
Oh, awesome.
and then a week of guided private tours in Crete, and then a two-week history tour in Turkey, and then a week in Izmir where friends of mine live, and so I'll get a chance to see them part of the time I'm there, depending on their schedules
Oh,
and
wow.
work. And I'm trying to get to Göbekli Tepe somehow. I haven't figured it out yet. So maybe this extra time will give me a way to get down there. And
Yeah,
there's so many
it's
other places.
yep, take the delays as there's a reason for it.
Something
There's
maybe money will be better because
yeah,
most of it's paid for, but there are a couple. The big tours are all paid for, but
yeah,
I got my airfare returned from last time, and
yeah,
my hotel in Izmir returned my money last time, and so I've
yeah.
got a couple things I've got to pay again, and I don't have all the money left that I was reimbursed.
Sure,
Property
sure.
taxes and
Oh
just all
yeah,
these things.
life. Well,
Yeah,
I look forward to. Well, I'll keep my fingers crossed for you that things are in a good place at that time where you can go and take the trip. And I look forward to
thank you.
seeing your journey on that and hearing the stories, what you experience over there. It's pretty cool. And another thing I want to put out there for everybody. Now you've got your own show that
Hmm.
you've been doing, and I've had the pleasure of being a guest on there.
Hmm.
Um, but tell us a little bit about your show. It's usually on Saturdays, right?
Usually on Saturdays. The plan is the first and third Saturday of the month. It's a live Facebook show. I use a platform that works well with it, and um, it's free. And then it's through this Simply Spooky Facebook page. My good friend Vivian Powell in England set up the page for this kind of thing and for different people
Yeah.
to use. If you're interested in contributing and things, let me know.
Okay.
And so I do the video live, and then it's saved on the Simply Spooky page, and I also put it on my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And I think my YouTube channel is under my name. I don't think it's Paranormal Insights, but I we talk about lots of different things.
Yes.
Part of what I'm working to get into is a little bit more the metaphysical
Yes.
with it. This Saturday, my guests are Casey Goodwin and Jay Verberg.
Oh, nice.
Yep. And the first Saturday in February, Vivian Powell from the UK,
Look forward to that one too.
my little sister. Um,
we we're
sister
big
from
fans of Vivian here in Port Gamble.
yeah, yeah, and we did. It was so much fun doing the
Virtual
part.
Ghost Conference.
Yeah, it was great. And Vivian did it from her home, and
Yeah.
I was actually up there, so I got to see you.
Yeah.
And oh,
William.
Vivian says hello to you and her best her love to you and Molly and the girls.
Oh, thanks,
I talked to
Vivian.
her today. So
Yeah, I want to have her on the show at some point, but I know there's a 8 hour time difference.
most
Um,
of the year,
mostly,
this
yeah.
under Bush, we started changing our clocks forward and back out of sync with the
Oh,
rest of the world. So
okay.
for a week and a half or 2 weeks, we're not the
It's
same.
not as bad. Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, I'd love to have Vivian on the show sometime. And so she's out in the UK, and we had a virtual ghost conference this last year in November with everything going on. And so William and Vivian were able to, they did a psychic workshop, which was really cool. And it was neat that she was planning to be in Port Gamble for be in the States, but with everything going on, of course, travel was canceled.
Mhm.
And but it's awesome to be able to have her still join in, and contribute that way. And one of these times, when things are safe and everything, I want to go to England and go see all the cool haunted locations over there. Never
Well,
been, so
I can give you, I'll set you up with three of the best tour guides, historians, storytellers anywhere in the world. They're good friends of mine in Salisbury.
yeah,
Time zone, time zone tours,
yes. And
and
you've had them on your show too.
I've had them on my show, and they're awesome people. And I need to go with you on this trip, and I'll help you see some good places.
Yeah, there's so many places I want to go and see. I mean, just even here in stateside,
Hmm.
just even here. But so check out William's show, and it's on. Go to his Facebook page. Now is that the Paranormal Insights, Para Insights
Paranormal Insights is, oh wait, Para Insights is
for
my
Facebook?
Facebook page. Yeah,
Yeah. So Para
and
Insights.
I do share those shows on that page. Hmm.
Yep. And so that's a good place to start, just to kind of see what William's going on in his
Hmm.
world, and who his guests are. And a lot of your guests have been from overseas, and
Yeah.
I think it's cool to hear a lot of those, stories and tales and
Hmm.
thoughts from across the ocean there. So I think that's pretty cool. But go to Para Insights on Facebook. You can follow him there, and you can start seeing where he goes and what he does. And um, but William, I want to thank
Thank
you.
you.
I think we're coming up here on the end here.
Wow.
The Paranormal Beat Show, and on WLTKDB.com. And I'm so glad you could come on tonight, and we'll have you on again.
Good. Thank you. I've
So
really had a
far,
great time.
well, thanks. Yeah, so far with all my guests, I feel like we could always, we could have like a 5 hour show, to kind of get everything out. So we'll definitely have you back again. And next
Okay.
week, I have a guy that I've been wanting to meet for a long time, and I guess I'll get to virtually meet him. Author and investigator Rick Hale, and so he'll be on next week, next Tuesday. And so I'm looking forward to picking his brain about the paranormal. Plus, he's a great writer, and so I want to kind of dig into some of that too. So I'm excited to have Rick Hale, and then I've got Michael White on the 26th, if I'm remembering my dates correctly. And then after that, on Groundhog's Day, I'm going to have Nicole Strickland coming up on the show, and I think we're going to try and find some fun, superstitious things to talk about, since Groundhog's Day is a very superstitious day. And so, anyways, I got a great shows lined up for the rest of the month here, and keep following us on WLTKDB.com. There's a show archive, and please check out the other shows on the station. There's some really great content, and to kind of keep you going all week on Let's Talk Radio. And William, I want to thank you again. And
Thank
I
you.
always leave every show with a toast, to remind people, because I think it needs to be out there, that the past is history and the future's a mystery, but today's a or today's a gift because it's the present. Excuse me. And just remind everybody to live in the now, especially with all the craziness going on in our world. Um, you know, be in the now, be present. Those, be present for those around you. Hug the people around you. Virtually hug anybody else you can.
Hmm.
And with that, we'll see you next week on the Paranormal Pete Show. Thank you.